really grateful on behalf of the entire team to Sirisha ma'am for joining us this morning. Um, Sirisha ma'am is a consultant and she works with various small and mid-sized companies to kind of guide them, advise them on their culture, their people strategy, and growth in general. Um, she, apart from being a consultant professionally right now, she's an alumna of IIMA, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, and she's also a Fulbright scholar. Um, so, if we look back at her life journey, and I'm sure she'll talk about that in the webinar too, it has so far so many lessons that we can learn. It has lessons of dreams, endeavoring and achieving different things, and also resilience, belief, work life balance, and a lot of other interesting takeaways. One more interesting fact is that Sirisha ma'am and Vivek sir have been batchmates at IIMA. So, with this, I would like to virtually welcome Vivek sir and Sirisha ma'am. Thank you so much once again, ma'am, for joining us on behalf of the entire Endeavor team.
Thank you so much for calling me over.
Thanks, Aditi, for organizing this and managing this for us. Hi, Shirisha, welcome.
Thanks.
Okay.
Hi,
Good to see
Vivek.
you.
Yeah.
15 years, I guess.
15 years, yeah.
Almost 15 years.
Yeah.
So,
So before we start, I think happy Guru Purnima to you and all your other teachers at Endeavor. I think fabulous effort that you're doing in shaping so many people's lives.
Since morning we are pouring with Guru Purnima messages, so it's a good morning,
Yeah.
In our effort, we didn't realize it's Guru Purnima. So
Yeah.
you are also a coach, and you have been mentoring so many executives. Happy Guru Purnima to you as well, and to our teachers and parents and everyone. So, Sirisha, now this whole journey of yours, right? Starting from one thing so we'll keep it very casual. So though I have
absolutely.
questions, though I have few questions lined up, and areas where I would like students to get some idea on career choices, as well as how at the age of 21, 22, their perception of the career life is very different than what actually it might turn out to be. So our effort is to make them ready, and they have a lot of aspirations, and they'll still find some hurdles. So how to get over this? So somewhere the objective is aligned to this. But in your intro, I found something very interesting. So when Aditi said that you have been a lifetime scholar, so maybe I'll start with the that you have been a lifetime scholar. So how does that put you in with respect to rest of your peers? Also, does it put a lot of pressure, and how have you handled this? So because it brings some expectations. So let's start with this, and then we'll start your journey of your life and career. How do you think?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the scholarship and the pressure, I think peer pressure is what you take, right? So because of a variety of reasons, or whatever I've seen in terms of my own life journey and the teachers I had and what they told me, what I realized is peer pressure is what you take. I firmly believe that each of us have our own journey and path to follow, and whatever we pick, doing it to the best of our ability. One of my teachers constantly tells me about to be the best that you can be every single day. I think that's what I look forward to. So so there's no pressure, no expectation. If at all there's expectation, I have expectations from myself in terms of what I want to be or how I can get even better.
So best you can be. So when did this come in your life, and how has it changed your life? Because we do all this, but I think we don't implement it too much.
Yeah. So I've gone through, when I was making some of those crucial career decisions, I think I was always very lucky to have a variety of coaches, mentors who've been helping me or asking me the right questions. At every time, whenever you're making that big decision, you have that doubt in your head, right? Am I doing the right thing? Am I leaving a lot on the table? And that's when a teacher, one of my coaches who I was talking to was actually told me, who was, in fact, if you remember, Professor Raghu Anantanarayanan, who was doing EI course along with Professor Indra Parikh when we were on campus. So he was someone I think I held to even after campus, because had a lot of learning from him. And one of the things that he always told me was, in life, it's very important. A lot of we'll all face a lot of challenges, go through a lot of things, and everybody has their own journey, right? So the moment you start comparing, no two lives are the same. So you will never get, you'll only start feeling unhappy about where you are, because there are always tons of people who are moving far ahead. And then, so two things that he taught me is, how do I define my career journey, and the other part is to be the best that you can be. So he says, pick what you want to do, and then strive to make sure you excel. So that started from campus days, and you're absolutely right, very difficult to put it into practice. So I remember one very funny incident. 3 years into working, I joined a big IT giant, and my boss asked me to make a presentation. Now, I think you'll agree, right? When we step out of IMA, we assume we are God's gift to mankind, right? So, we are here to transform the world and all of that. So I had that attitude, and when I started work, the first thing he said, okay, I want you to make this presentation. And then he started telling me, slide 1, I want you to do this. This is what slide 2, I want you to talk about this. Slide 3, I want you to talk about this. I told him, look, I have my own head. So, you tell me what you want, I'll work on the presentation. So he said, no. He said, this is something, you're doing it for the first time, and I will tell you, and this is how you will learn. Somehow it hit me on the wrong side, and I said, you know what, I can do a lot of things. Why is he asking me to do all of this? So I just blindly noted on whatever he said, and you won't believe, I made a pure black and white presentation, okay, just putting verbatim what he told me, and I sent it to him. So he called me to his room, to his cabin, and he said, okay, I said, come, write your obituary. So I was shocked. Why is he asking me to do this? So he said, write your obituary. I said, why? He said, do you know what obituary means? I said, yeah, you write it for people who are dead. He said, write your obituary. I want you to write 3 things that you want people to remember you for. Because people write about good things that they remember about you, but it should be those uniform qualities that everybody will see. So then I wrote few things. I wrote about being passionate, being hardworking, and giving the best that I can give for anything. He said, keep these 3 things in mind, stick them in front of you, and you should show that in everything you do, even if it's the smallest of chores. So that hit me really hard, because that's great, right? To actually say that, everything that you want to do, you need to show what are those values, or what are those qualities that you stand for.
Right.
So to date, I mean, it's 14 years, and he's still one of my very good friends and mentors, and keeps guiding me. But this is, to me, that was like the turning point where I actually started implementing, and I consciously started thinking about what is it that I should do to be the best in what I can do. And the more you start practicing, I think very soon it evolved into every day. I think, okay, what is the best that I can do today? Because no 2 days are the same, right? There's some days you're low on energy. There's some days you're just not in the frame of mind to do. But given that, what is the best that you can do in that particular day is what I look for.
We'll come to that later, Sirisha. That is one set of questions which we are handling. That how do you handle the days when you don't have high on energy? But let's try to understand your life journey. Okay. Two parts. One is your life journey. How from maybe someone who was a spirited young achiever, and you walked into doors, corporate doors, and how you faced some challenges and how you encountered those challenges. And then maybe we'll come to the professional journey. So can you just give us, your key milestones or lessons in your life journey, and how have you taken the life, what life brought on your way, and how you and what you made out of you, and why you are the person you are, today. Maybe it'll be a real eye opener.
Sure, I'll do that. So I had a I was born, brought up in Hyderabad. Had a very interesting childhood. I was always a topper academically, and I was always very active in athletics. And so for me, life was like fun, and I used to do a lot of. I used to have a lot of fun in school, but I was always liked by the teachers because of the way I was balancing both and all of that. So suddenly, when I was 13 years old, I had fever for a couple of days, and suddenly I could move my left hand. Okay, which was totally shocking because we didn't know what happened. So then they admitted me to the hospital, a variety of things and tests and all. Within 6 hours, I realized I can't move my right hand. And that was a shock. So they immediately shifted me to the ICU. Nobody was knowing what was happening. Doctors were not able to figure out because my fever was normal. I was talking, I was conscious, everything, but then this happened. Then next was where they within 6 hours, so they took me to the hospital, and they said, you know what, let's scan her entire body to see what's going wrong. And I got up and then I collapsed, and that's it. My legs, my back, everything was gone. So everything under my neck was totally paralyzed. Now that was totally shocking. Doctors didn't know what was going on. And after some time, they put me in ICU because they said you could get into some complications. And then they realized that there was some amount of respiratory trouble that could possibly happen. And when that, so they put me into the ICU for 2 months. I was in the ICU. After about 45 days, they diagnosed that it was something called...
How old were you? With 11?
13. 13. After about 45 days, they finally diagnosed that it could be a variant of a very unique disease called spinal meningitis, where the meninges, the layer surrounding your spinal cord, get infected because of a virus. So nobody knows why, what, and nobody knows how to handle it also. So 60 days into and so they were expecting that the organs will start getting affected, which is why I was put in the ICU. But I was awake, conscious, and went through a variety of things those 2 months. And at the end of 60 days, doctors pronounced their judgment saying, good news and bad news. Good news, she's alive. Okay. Bad news is nothing can happen. I mean, she can't recover because this is irreversible. So then we came back, but my dad my dad is a sports person all through. So my dad said, nothing doing. Who are they to say that, it's not recoverable? We'll start working on it. And we did enormous amount of physiotherapy. And in fact, that academic year, I passed because of already I got promoted to the next year because I had good academic average so far. And next year, even when I was not able to walk, my dad used to actually pick me and take me to school. Just pick me in his hands, take me to school, make me sit, listen to the classes, and evening we used to do physiotherapy. And made me do so much that I recovered. Even till date, the doctors, I mean, I'm still in touch with all the doctors who've treated me. And for them, I'm a miracle. So that probably was like a big life lesson in resilience, right? And that taught me my first, probably very important lesson, which probably I think I realized it as a lesson much later on in life. But it taught me that whether you're breathing or not is an issue. Everything else is not. So sometimes when, probably after having gone through all of this, I realized when people get mentally disturbed for really small things, when people, go to the extent of taking their own lives for small things, then realize, just remember, every life will go through a lot of twists and turns, but, whether you're breathing or not is the real issue for which you don't have too much control. Everything is a problem, and every problem will have its own solution. You just have to figure it out. So that was my first lesson. My second lesson in terms of career journeys, right? So,
life journey.
Yeah, life journey. My second lesson in terms of my life journey was when I went to Ahmedabad. I think you'll also relate to it. Right? I mean, the moment you get in there, that's a totally different environment, enormous amount of pressure, enormous amount of work that people are doing, lots to study. And for me, going to Ahmedabad was the first time I was living in a hostel. So for me, everything was different. Right? Until then, I was studying at Hyderabad, and suddenly I go live in a hostel, and I'm seeing there's never-ending amount to study, and just getting lost. So my first term, and always I've been post my illness also, I was my state topper in 12th, and I was my university topper all my 3 years in 4 years in graduation, all of that. So then when I came to campus, so now here you're coming with the mindset that it's just looking at getting back to your A game, right? And I got totally lost. So I ended up with a few C's and a few B's. So for me, that was hitting me hard. So if you remember first term, actually, we were allowed to pick mentors. We could go to reach out to professors to actually, ask them to mentor you or help you sail through that first year, right? So there was one favorite professor of mine, Professor Koshi, who used to teach us brand management. So Koshi sir was my mentor, and I said, I'm kind of disturbed. I think I'll just walk out. I don't think this is what I can do. And so he said, okay, come over to my house for a cup of coffee. So I went in, and then he listened to all my rants, and he asked me about my academic journey, what I learned and all of that. So I was telling him, yeah, I did this. I was talking more about how I fared academically. And so then Koshi sir asked me, why did you join IMA? So I said, yeah, good job, better career prospects and all of that. So he said, but that you will probably get it through other institutes also. Why IMA? So then I told him that, there's a lot to learn here, and, there good professors, there's so much, there's access to so much infrastructure, so much that we can learn all around us. So he said, but you never know what is learning. What you've always been doing is only studying. I don't think you've learned anything at all in your life.
Wow.
So that hit me, that actually got me thinking. I said, what do you mean? So then he was saying, let me explain the difference about what is studying and what is learning. So he said, studying clearly is where you're doing with an objective. Ye padna hai to achieve this. Okay. So for you, you've always defined studying as to achieve something. But learning is lifelong.
Right.
It's there all around. It's about what you absorb. Nothing in learning goes waste. Tell me one thing you did that did not help you one thing that you actually tried learning till date, which was not something that contributed to you academically.
Right.
So no, you've always been only studying. You've been studying with a goal. You've never learned. So this is an institute where people come to learn.
Right.
For me, that was transformational, because I realized how wrongly we benchmark success. Success as a student, we very wrongly benchmark success as a student about your academic numbers, the marks and percentages that you get. Success later on in life in the corporate world about the money you make. But these are probably two really wrong measures.
Correct.
Or these are very, I wouldn't even say wrong measures. These are probably very unidimensional measures that we are assigning to it.
Right.
And he said, you have to learn. You have to, come be open to learn. If you don't understand something, take 10 days to learn it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to do it in 2 days because the rest of your batch is doing it in 2 days. Like, I never had accounting background, right? So MENAC was like a nightmare for me. Then Quant was a nightmare for me. But I used to thoroughly enjoy operations management. I used to enjoy a few other subjects. So then he said, the areas that you're not knowing, if you're passionate about learning, just sit and learn. Walk out to one prof who will say no if you go and ask them for something. You have access to Vikram Sarabhai library, and that's probably the best resources that you could find. So that was again a big lesson, because I think post my first term, marks were happening. Marks were coming, going. There were some very good ones. There were not so good ones. But I focused on actually spending a lot of time learning. That helped, because for me, I used to spend a lot of time in the library. And, I think the big joke in my dorm was, if you have to find Sirisha, first search in the library. And if you don't find her there, then you can come to her room. So that's how it was. So that was like second big lesson, about learning. Learning is lifelong, and prepare yourself to learn forever. That's what is going to keep you active, mentally active. Always have that passion, that looking forward to waking up with excitement every day.
Which is very visible in the number of courses you end up doing, and how
Yeah,
your career shaped up from there. So if
yeah,
you compare most of the typical B school careers, the way they flow, they get into corporate, they start achieving heights. Maybe by 30s, late 30s, they have started fighting for the CXO roles, and versus you have focused on learning, and pursued different set of courses and create your own niche. Okay,
yeah.
so I think that had such a huge impact on
Yeah, that
your.
actually helps me right now, even at work, because there are multiple things that I can talk about with comfort.
Right.
Having seen different areas, worked in different areas, so it's that's what also helps me. So that actually got me to make sure that every alternate year I invest significant amount of time learning on a course, and every year most of my measures are in terms of what have I learned.
Oh,
picking
wow.
up picking up areas that are totally outside of work. It could be art, it could be music, it could be anything, but just trying to learn something
What are you learning
new
now?
here. And
What are
now
you
I'm actually experimenting on learning all the 8 Indian art forms, which are the Patachitra, the drawing art forms. We have Madhubani, we have Varli, we have Patachitra, we have Tanjore paintings. So I'm attempting to learn those.
You sure are a
That's
miracle, right?
the one of the other things apart from the work related learning that I'm doing, some things that I'm working on. This is one thing that I'm looking at exploring this year. Yeah.
So this brings me to the next area where a lot of students also have an interest. Two things. One is how the idea, the seed of pursuing an MBA came into mind. Okay, and then because it was a technical shift also for you, from you were not from a commerce background. Okay, and from being let's say engineering graduate, to the whole idea of being into this HR and this leadership coaching. How did this journey happen, and how fruitful has this been? You know, so generally maybe your life, milestones, your career, how it has shaped, because that will also give an idea how beautifully careers can be shaped. Especially to a lot of young women who have joining us or who would be watching this video later. You know, so from that perspective also, plus the idea that MBA, the career journey itself, students should have an idea where they are going. Add to it, I'll also like to know.
Yeah. So okay, two things first, right? One, journey is always in hindsight. Okay, all of these are decisions I took at different points in time. These are choices I made. Okay, so when I look back the 15 years, it looks like journey. Now today, whatever decisions I take in the next 2-3 years is not something that I plan as a roadmap or a journey, but decisions at that point in time. So I think all choices we make depend on the circumstances at that point in time, in your context, right? So that's how these decisions happen. So you're talking about my shift from computer science to MBA. I'll tell you a shift even before that. So I always aspired to be a doctor. Okay, in fact, if I have to actually say, when I was in my 4th or 5th standard, I used to sign off as head neurosurgeon, FRCS London. Okay, so that used to be my aspiration. I always wanted to be a neurosurgeon. And so I was pursuing medicine. Now, even when I fell ill and all, everybody said I could go into physician side of it. So I was pursuing, and then got admitted into a medical school. Okay, one of the best medical schools I've got the admit to. And then after a few months, I was sent back, because they said from that year surgery was compulsory, and you need 100% physical health to be a surgeon. So I was sent back. So for me, that was like a big disappointment. Okay, now disappointment, getting over it is one part of it. The next part was, okay, what do I do next? Right? So always focused on sciences. After 10th, I never studied maths. and even so through the school, right, maths was there, but I was always focused on sciences. So then what do I do? So then there was a so then I had to said, okay, let me do bachelor's computer science, so let me figure out how I'll do it. And then I started learning programming. I joined probably 4 months before the I joined college 4 months before the first year exams, because I already joined the medical school. I spent some time there. After 3-4 months I was out. Then I had to figure out where I'll join. I had to figure out where I'll get an admit, who will give me an admit into something, into a field that I don't even have. So in a small college I got my admit on all of that. So then started studying. So programming seemed interesting, so did bit of it. So I remember the first year, I wrote the exam. Nobody even knew me in the college, right? Because I joined like 4 months before. So they thought, ye kahin se to aayi hai types. So, and I was lost. Didn't know ABC of programming. So I was like sitting day and night trying to learn programming on my own, because a lot of the teaching was already done in college. And the results came and they said, somebody from this college topped the university. And that was me. So for me, that became a turning point. Then I think by then I realized that if I put my heart and soul to it, I can do it. And I think that's the same for all of us, right? So when you know that this is what you want to do, you make sure you're giving it your best and doing it. So then went on, so studied there. Now even there, because it was computer science, a lot of programming and stuff, but I didn't do quant. Then it came, when I was in my final year, was the decision. I had to make the decision of whether I wanted to do an MBA or do higher studies in computer science. And a lot of talking. My brother was already studying at IIM Bangalore then. So, talking to him, finding out. And probably I think the life journey, all the experiences I went through, right, I had heightened level of self-awareness. I knew what I'm good at, what I can do, what I can't do. So that's when I said, okay, let me go for an MBA. Now I had 10 months to write CAT, and I remember my first the mock CAT that you usually take before you start, right? I had like abysmal scores. I still remember the numbers. So can I share those numbers? Yeah, my quant was 5 out of 50. Okay, my verbal was 30. My reading comprehension was around 35. And my data interpretation, I got 7. So that was a 200 mark paper. All these scores were out of 50. Okay, so I said, where am I going to even land with this? So then worked hard, worked really hard. And I know what I mean, because it was like, you sleep at around 11:30, 12, wake up at 4:30 again and study, because you have a day college to complete, the college work to finish, and then also prepare. I was doing it along with my final year. So there was a lot of work that was going on there also. And towards the end, quant happened to be my strongest area. And I did fairly well. Probably, I think I was the only person from AP to get through all the 6 IIMs then.
Right.
So bottom line of actually saying this is, the scores can't get, I think, worse than this, right? When I started off.
Yeah.
So it's all possible. I think it's all doable. It's just about putting your heart and soul into what you want to do.
So once so I wanted to understand. See, from IMA, to this portfolio of coaching you have created. So you can take through that journey from passing through MBA, how these decisions made, what came in your life. You might have taken some interesting choices, and taken this career route. So how how rewarding the career has been, and how the choices you made, somewhere on the way.
Yeah. So I think choices I made, I was always, I think if I look back, I don't regret on anything, because they were all choices I made. So first thing is, me making my own decisions, right? Or what I want to do, not because of something else. So started off as a banker, did very well there, was doing very well there. And after a year or so, I realized, that's not the grind that I want to go through. Because as a person, I was always doing a variety of things, and that's what kept me sane. I was pursuing something or the other outside of just the core studies also. So I had some hobbies, and I used to invest time reading. So banking didn't give me the chance. I was working almost 14 hours, 15 hours a day. Again, right? Because there I wanted to do the best that I can do there, which is where I used to spend really long hours working. And that's when I was also getting married. So then that was the choice that I made, that I will switch, and moved into consulting in a tech firm. And so that was my first choice decision that I made then. Very simple. I was not getting that kind of work-life balance that I wanted. I completely enjoyed my job. I think whatever I learned there was my biggest first work lessons, right? Everything about your work ethics, to getting things done on time, to managing yourself. Learned a lot there, but I realized that's not my cup of tea. So that's when I moved to consulting in tech firm. Then got married. Tech consulting was very good in the sense that I could also, because I had my earlier tech science background, right, and the business acumen part that I gained in while working in a bank. That banking, so in the banking financial services, I started working as a consultant. Learned a lot there. Did that for quite some time. Yeah, but consulting is where it's very dynamic world, right? Where you're always on the move, and there are lots of things that are coming and going and all of that. So amount of work pressure, or you're always working with 3 clients, trying to figure out which one is going to materialize for the company and all of that. So consulting worked well. Then had 2 kids. So in between, I think I was very lucky to work with a nice firm where whenever I was taking breaks to study, I was always investing time to study. That's when I did my mind mapping certification. That's when Stanford design thinking happened, all of that. Then I realized after my second kid was born, I realized consulting, by then I was already managing a huge team of consultants. I was leading a practice. So then I realized consulting, being on the move all the time with kids at home is not something that I would want to do. And you're a senior consultant, you're pushing your team to go travel and get things done, and you're saying, I'm not going to move because I need to take care of my family, was not a right thing to do, right? So that's when I was looking at what next. So while I was consulting, I was also program managing large engagements. The biggest team size I managed was close to about 500 or 463 people with more than $500,000 P&L. So that's where when I was managing that, I realized my USP was the way I was handling my teams. My USP was the way my team was always the happiest, and there was zero attrition, nobody leaving my team, and they were all very happy. That was my way of getting things done from people. And that also got me very interested in, the people part of it. And I realized, large teams, big corporates, what differentiates one team from another team? It's all the same type of people that the company takes in, right? But what differentiates a successful unit versus a not so successful unit is how you get things done from the team. So I realized that people are crux to what any organization does. And after the real capital, right, the real money, it's the human capital that matters, because all strategies, all marketing, everything that you have in place is all fine as long as you have great people to execute. That got me interested in people. So when I was looking at, consulting is where I don't want to take it further, at least for some time, as a consultant in the company. I didn't want to take it at that time because my kids were small and they needed my attention. They needed me to be, I wanted to be around them, not miss their growing years. So that's where I took that call of leaving consulting and moving into the people side of things. So the advantage I had by then already was, so within the same company I took this move. The advantage I had was I understood what the business wants, and I had done design thinking and other things. So I knew what is needed to make work in the people area transformational. And that's where even I moved to learning and development, leadership development, and coaching, which is where I was actually doing something called outcome-based consulting for business units within the company. So any business unit, they say, this is our problem, this is what we need to get done. I was helping them, making sure they're getting things done. So that's how that shift into L&D and learning and development and leadership development and coaching happened. So that was a journey in itself, because I had to start learning everything from
What
scratch.
is this coaching, and what is coaching, and how would you tell these students? Please, I think it's a very upcoming field, and it really has a lot of impact on the performance. So how rewarding has been coaching for you? What is coaching, and generally how should young executives or people who are getting in career, even maybe for our batchmates also, if that could be a good advice. How should one approach this?
Yeah. So this whole space of learning and development, leadership development, right, is actually fast evolving. Okay. Earlier at a point in time, it was all about, it was very operational, very transactional the way it's being done. Now, over the last 5 years, I think it's phenomenal, 5 to 10 years actually, phenomenal amount of evolution in the way people are actually looking at this, and how it is going to impact the business. Earlier, it was a checklist. Now, people actually do all of this to create an impact on the business. And in terms of coaching, uh, the best part about it is it's very gratifying, right? You're actually helping a person. It's not just about talking, but you're actually helping a person or a business unit, a business leader, get his team along and take them through a journey that's going to make them reach the next milestone. So for me, in terms of the reward, it's been extremely gratifying. You can actually see the change that you're making. And I'm sure, like, as teachers, you all will probably see that, right, where you're taking children through that journey of 1 year, 1.5 year that they're associated with you, and then they get to somewhere. That's very gratifying. So that's the level of gratification that I find in this, um, which which very different from getting the gratification when you're growing businesses. Both are two separate things, right? So this gratification is actually doing with people, and you form real strong bonds with people. So that's been very rewarding. Um, and in terms of, so what is coaching? Coaching is helping someone go from point A to point B without you giving the answers, but actually helping them discover the answers. And no two journeys are the same. So a coach doesn't go with a set process of ye problem hai, ye solution hai, ye le lo, follow kar lo. That's not how it works. You need to help that person, because in coaching, you're actually helping that person transform. Where whatever they start doing is their choice and is going to become their way of life. So you can't give your way of life or your choices to them and say, this is what you should do. So you never give any solutions, answers in coaching. And I benefited a lot through coaches all along. We wouldn't have called it coaching or whatever, right? But right from very early age, you always had someone who would guide you, who would help you reflect, who would help you become more self-aware. And like I told you about my life journey, right? There are a lot of times when you needed someone to ask you those tough questions. A coach also asks you those tough questions. Coach also helps you reflect, introspect to get your deepest fears outside, where you're actually addressing your deepest fears. So some successful coaching journeys are where you actually let that person reflect to get to their deepest fears and get them out, which actually helps them in that journey. So it's very personal, very different. I benefited a lot through coaches all along. Even today, for different things, I have different coaches I constantly work with, because they help you grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So very interesting. So you're an MBA couple.
Yeah.
Can you say that? So
Yeah.
how has career, being a career mom and to an extent career dad, how do you balance it? And who is it tough for? Is it tough for you, or is it tough for your partner? How does it go?
So the best part is, okay, so I met my husband during the B School Fest conference at IMA, and he was also an MBA. He'd come to visit, attend that festival, and that's how I met. And the best part about, so we got married pretty soon after that. So we've literally been growing together, growing through our career together. And so I think what works best is we striking a balance. So there are different times when my decisions, choices that I was making became important. Where he was making sure he's there with the kids, and there are times when I needed to make sure I give him that adequate support. So he's an entrepreneur. He has his own company now. He's so he 2010 he moved into entrepreneurship, and that's when. So I think we've struck that good balance. So we now have a 14-year-old and a 10 and a half year old. So I think it's all about striking that balance. It's all about mutual respect. It's all about giving each other's
You're
space,
not taking a
and
stand. You're saying it's almost equal.
it's equal. It got to be equal, and that's why it's called a balance, right? Otherwise, because at any point you don't want either one to actually feel that they've left something behind for somebody else. I think, like I was saying earlier, right? Everything you make is choices you make in life. So, like for instance, I remember when he was moving into entrepreneurship. That was when our young one was really small, and I had an option to actually travel to UK for 6 months, and then I said no, I'm not doing that because I knew he was getting into entrepreneurship, and he was literally working for 16 hours a day. So at that time, if I travel, then who will take care of the kids? So it's all about striking balance. It's all about the trust and mutual respect. So yeah.
Couple of quick questions, Sirisha. Uh, One is, because see, this is something since I mentor students over across time and who have successfully done MBA. Okay, and we have a reasonable strong percentage as far as gender diversity is concerned in our system as well as in students. So, is there a typical gender bias in corporate India? How does, these young women, manage this if there it is? How do, as a woman, they go about managing their career and life? Any specific advice to, them? Because I would like that angle to be there because that's I think there is a glass ceiling also attached somewhere, and it's not very easy when you are balancing these 2 3 steps which are kind of you want to do. Okay, it's not that you don't want to do, plus there are expectations also, so what would be your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So two the quick things. I think one, ask for help when you need. Okay. So that could be at work. That could be this. Just voice out and not struggle. You don't have to do it all. Okay, so you can ask for help, seek out, reach help to make sure you do what you want to do. Second, be very clear about what you want to do. I think with all talks around diversity and inclusion, whatever I have seen in corporates now, when I work outside with corporates as an outsider, and when I was in the corporate world, I think if you're very clear about what you want to do and how you want to do it, in terms of what is it that what is your aspiration, where do you want to reach, you have ways of doing it. Corporates today are slowly starting to become flexible. Like for instance, I know when my kids were small, for a job that was supposed to always done in office, I got the permission to actually work from home because I needed to be around. So corporates are becoming very flexible, but you have to ask for it. Nobody will never become the victim, never get into that, victimizing mentality where you're waiting for someone to offer support. Ask for help when you need it. And be very clear. You can't do it all. So don't have guilt pangs. And at any point, like I've been talking all through, right? Every stage is a choice you make. So for every choice, there's some wins and there's some things that you lose. So be very conscious of that. So
Again,
don't need to get into guilt because of it.
so now you're talking a very heightened sense of self-awareness, So how does one get this self-awareness throughout? Maybe they are talking about 3 times in this conversation, and this is something which we try to pass to students. Maybe it's they will reach their in their journey some point of time, okay, and but it comes naturally. So, generally, how does one, ensure, like someone like you who have seen maybe so many struggles from your childhood, which did impact your career decisions also. So you wanted to be, to an extent, pursue medicine from, getting into, coding, then pursuing MBA to getting into, banking, to getting into consulting, to pursuing HR, to doing leadership coach, to being a, uh, have two such beautiful kids and managing family and lovely life. This would require a lot of self awareness and setting yourself the right goals and the things you should are the right, or the clutter in your head. Now how does one go about this process?
So, okay, I can only tell what worked for me.
Yeah.
One, constant reflection. And when you're reflecting, it has to be brutal. Okay, it's like somebody else dissecting you, right? It has to be brutal. Saying, yeah, this is wrong, this is right. That's where coaches help me a lot. Because it's dispassionate judgment, right? You are in coaching. What happens is you reach out to the coach. So when you reach out to the coach, you're saying, yes, I need help. And that's why they're free to ask you all brutal questions. So the coaches help me a lot, and I constantly do a lot of reflection. I have lofty dreams, always. Okay, so that lofty dreams generally sets the direction. So small setbacks, all of that happen, but my dreams are so lofty that these setbacks seem smaller in the bigger picture of things. And you know that this too shall pass, because that's where I want to reach. So I think those two things for me have constantly helped me pick myself back whenever I have had setbacks. So, whenever you fall down, you keep picking yourself up. That's happened a lot of times, right? A lot of failures, a lot of times that happens when you keep falling down. But you pick yourself up and you see what you learn from that. And because you know that is that bigger goal. So when that dream gets, larger, right, then fear slowly starts to disappear. So,
but how do you, this third party, is there a process? Do you make a blog, or do you, talk to coaches, and
I shamelessly reach out to people.
Timeline, maybe a month or a quarter or something like this. How does it work for you?
I shamelessly reach out to people asking for help when I need help. And I'm very clear with them. See, this is what I want to learn from you. This is where I think I struggle today. This is what I want to learn from you. So can you help? Barring 2 or 3 here and there, I don't think nobody ever said no. Okay, because you have to be. So I think they also look for somebody who wants to be genuine. For instance, today, people reach out to me, and I have never said no to anyone. It becomes outside of my work hours. I go out of my way to figure out. Don't go and ask ki mujhe naukri dilao. At least that's what was my motto. I never go and ask people, get me this project, or get me this job. I've not done that. I've always gone to learn something from them. But the kind of questions that they have asked, every time it just keeps enriching you. Every time somebody asks you a question, there's always something that you learn something, or you've not thought it in that way, and you'll start doing differently. And that coach need not be someone. For me, sometimes the conversations I have with my husband are like that. I say, you know what, you're very good at this. Can you help me in this? So that's just, I think that's what I said, right? Shamelessly reach out for help and know what you want help for, and reach out, and that helps.
Very interesting talking to you, Sirisha. I will just sum my learnings or your life lessons from you in the 5 points which I am able to get, and then maybe ask you some few one-word questions and pass it to Aditi, and Aditi then can take questions from students. So, one is, continuous learning. Okay, that one has to be into continuous learning. 2, though you have not said specifically, but go with the flow, be open for opportunities, what come to your way, because your life journey somewhere is across that. 3, be the best you can be. 4, ask for help. Okay, and perseverance, and give your best shot. Because whatever comes into it, because more or less these 5 should strike a balance. You try to strike a balance to add another one. So I think this is what I have gained. Thanks a ton. But quickly before we move to Aditi, 3 books you recommend to our students.
One is Factfulness by Hans Rosling. That's something that uh, impacted me a lot. Then Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg. All about habit building and doing the right things. Then a whole lot of podcasts that I constantly listen to, like BJ Fogg and Guy Kawasaki and Simon Sinek and all of them. So each of them have written a whole ton of books. And what I realized with podcasts is you get the gist of that book through the podcast in 20 to 30 minutes. So some of those are absolutely wonderful, that keep making you think, reflect. Yeah.
How do you catch news?
Least interested. It's News Today. This is called News Today. There's some specific sites that I go and read for work, for general update on what's happening in the business world. But no.
Right. And how do you plan to retire, or you don't plan to retire?
I don't plan to retire.
Never.
Yeah, I love my work. So
I think that is enough. Aditi, thanks a lot, Sirisha. Very, very, very positive interaction, and I really learned a lot from you. And Aditi can take the question.
It was a pleasure talking.
Yeah, so did I. Especially your ever smiling face is like, it just made my Sunday morning. Thank you so much for this lovely conversation. Thank you, Vivek sir, for asking the right kind of questions. We have many students who have raised a lot of questions. Jayesh, are you here? Can you go first with your question?
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yeah, Jayesh.
Yeah. Firstly, greetings to all the mentors and all the teachers of the Guru Purnima. And the question is, ma'am, I'm not getting my results, desired results of mock exams. Initially, my result was very poor, but after approaching each and every strategy, scheduling the things, doing one-to-one with my mentors, daily lecture attending and the test series daily. I'm giving my 100%, and still I'm not liking my results. Still now I'm giving my mocks, and I lose my confidence after not getting desired results. That's not the thing that my target is very high, but I deserve to be an average result, but I can't get it. So this is the thing that I'm losing confidence in the things. So
yeah. So 2-3 things that I can tell you is never lose confidence. Confidence is the only thing that you will carry with you.
Yes, ma'am. That's the thing that that's the attitude of my not giving up is holding me till now. Just I'm trying my best and going continuous in a flow, but still lacking in some part, or where I don't understand.
You can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results. So maybe you need to change some things. You need to look at that, right? You can't keep doing the same thing again and again and expect something different to happen. Third, things take time.
Yes.
Okay, things take enormous amount of time to work. I told you would have heard about my CAT scores, my initial CAT scores, right? So I'm sure listening to those scores, you're much happier now, in much happier place. But things take time. You just have to keep working, and also check probably if you have to do some things differently. That's where your teachers come to your aid the most.
Yes, ma'am. I reached to my mentors, and also I did my one-to-one discussions with my mentors. They guided me in a better way, and I'm following the approach, but still bit lacking the results.
It'll come.
So
results will happen. You focus only on effort. Result will happen.
Waiting for the tipping point.
Yeah, it'll happen.
Trust me on that. I'll add a bit, Sirisha. Jayesh, I think the CAT is really far, and maybe the next you need to get your basics right. And if you're gonna be so bothered about the result, the anxiety levels, when you will be writing the paper, will not give you the score. Okay, so what are your anxiety levels when you're taking the test is also very important. So maybe what is happening in your head is your figment of your imagination. What really will happen in life, we don't know. Okay. So, maybe, I think you're stressing too much. Nothing to worry for the next maybe quarter. Just keep giving your hard work.
Yeah.
Yes,
And I
thank
think
you so
just
much,
focus
sir.
on effort. Just focus only on effort. Forget about the result for now.
Okay, ma'am. Definitely, I will go through this now. Right?
Yeah.
Keep this in mind.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jayesh, for asking that question. Vivek sir in his reply mentioned that, cat is really far. That brings me to my next question, which Arpita Naina has asked. She says, sometimes when we think of achieving something huge, something beyond what we are in the process of pursuing at present. For example, ma'am, in your case, thinking of going to Stanford while preparing for CAT before getting into IIMA, or something that seems so huge and hard to achieve and in fact close to impossible, but we intend to do it. So most of the time it also scares us a lot. So is it okay to think of something that is so far away from today, or should we instead first complete the current task at hand before moving to thinking about anything next? How should a person manage all these thoughts is what she's asking.
Yeah, I think I'll go back to what I said. Dream something lofty, something really big, which seems impossible today. Okay, and you will. But when you're dreaming, okay, just sitting, lying down, and dreaming is not going to help. Dream something big, but still take some baby steps every day, and that's why be the best that you can be on that particular day comes. If you have 3 goals, take those baby steps and keep working towards it. Like for instance, one of my dreams now is I've not focused much on my physical health. One of my dreams now is to go to the Everest Base Camp soon. It's huge. It's humongous. Okay, any doctor who will see me will ask me, "Are you stupid? Why do you want to even try something like that?" For me, it doesn't matter. That's the goal, because that's what motivates every single day, even if you're feeling low on energy, even if you're feeling down, to actually get up and at least walk. Like that. Same thing, in terms of I want to impact at least 1,000 people, sharing my life story to see if it actually helps them make some of those decisions and face life in a much positive way. Now for that, even if it's writing a single blog post, that is fine. If that's all I can do on a particular day, that is just fine. There'll be a good days when I can actually go and influence a corporate. There'll be days together when nothing works. It's all okay in the larger scheme of things, but your dream, that true North Star, is actually what will make you push yourself.
That's true. Mihir, are you here? You want to go next with your question? Mihir Khodasara. His question is again similar to things that you have been talking. He says, what was that point in time when you realized or when you determined that you want nothing less than this, and what does it take to achieve it?
Yeah, nothing. At every stage, whatever is that big goal that I set for myself, like Fulbright Fellowship, that goal was there for me for 5 years. Getting that fellowship was a goal that I set like 5 years before that. I knew a bunch of things that need to be done for that, and I was working on getting those done. So I think that happens. So again, right? All of this was not a planned, chartered journey. While I had big dreams, there were some work, some didn't work, like my FRCS didn't work. All are big dreams, all are dreams that work towards, but always be open and flexible. You pick what comes your way and keep working on it as long as you're moving in that direction. In hindsight, this entire story sounds very, very, beautiful. But at those points in time, probably I wouldn't have thought. It was just a choice or a decision I had to make. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Maybe I will not do it this time. Maybe I'll do it the next time. That's all it is. So just go, while you have dream, you have your aspirations in place. Also be open, flexible, and be highly self-aware to see what is happening around you and see how you want to respond to it.
Yeah, I think a lot of questions are on the same line, so I'm just kind of clubbing them together. So Binjan has a question. He says, how to keep the motivation high in such times of despair? Because like you rightly said, when you look back, it all seems like a very nice success story. But at that particular time of despair, it's really tough to deal with. So how do you keep your motivation high at that particular
That's where dreams help. That's where your lofty goals help. Because your lofty goal makes you feel, what otherwise seems like a big roadblock when you look at it in the context of your bigger goal, it then becomes a stumbling block. So that larger goal keeps your motivation high.
Right. Ma'am, Kalpan Shah has a question. He's asking, how is life after IIM? How did MBA help you in shaping your career?
Life is always fun. It's always beautiful, right? So life has been good. Life post IIM, I think what the brand did to me was probably, your brand and everything help you for your first 2 jobs. After that, it's all about what you do. What I went through there in those 2 years actually taught me a lot of life skills, life lessons in terms of perseverance and rigor and being true to yourself. I think that's what. Otherwise, your brand actually carries you to a certain extent, and after that, it's all about who you are as a person that takes you forward.
Right.
I mean, nobody will entertain me if I go today and say, you know what, 15 years back I passed out from IIM. So people say, who cares? It's about what you're doing now that matters. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So you did touch upon how you manage your work and your family in terms of how the equation is between you and your husband. But Rushi has a question about work-life balance in general. And because I have been interacting with you, I know that you have a very nice funda of keeping 3 months aside for learning a new skill, or you love traveling. And so what would you say about work-life balance in general? How should one manage it?
I think there's no work-life balance. It's only work-life integration. Okay, I think it's now become a cliche term, right? So it's all about doing what you want to do. That's what I'm saying. Like I was mentioning earlier also, own your life. Be responsible for all choices, decisions you make. My decision to not work in the corporate world and consult on my own was my decision. My decision to travel at any point in time is my decision. So it's all choices that make you happy, that make you feel good about life. And that's what in turn makes life beautiful, right? You're just doing what you want to do. So yeah, it's all about figuring out what you want and doing it. And that's where, how do you define success matters, right? So if you set success as something that is, money, then your work-life integration will be very different. If you set success as some other measure, then it's going to be different. It's about how you define success for yourself.
Perfect. One last question, and maybe Vivek sir, if you want to pitch in here, you can. Soham asks that for those who are with the admit of Cloud 1 B School admits, is it the right time to do an MBA?
I'll just explain it. The question to you, Sirisha. The question is, so if you are in the top league of B schools, one is obviously maybe IIMs. Another is the likes of MDIs and Narsi Monji, or you can say the top pie of 30-40 B schools in this country overall, or 50 B schools, which we know that's a huge demand, and because the number of MBAs have gone up. When we were doing MBA, we had 1,000 seats, roughly 800
seats. Yeah.
Okay, now there are lots. So he's saying is, let's say if somebody is not getting into the top league APC, is it a good time to do an MBA, or whatever is his someone's classification of top 10 or 15? So is it essentially, is it a good time to do an MBA during the COVID period?
I think COVID or not COVID, what B school teaches you is what a B school teaches you, right? So if you're looking at it as placements post-COVID, that's a different thing. But I think there's enormous amount of stuff that we can learn just by going to a B school. So yeah, placements a year or later, but the skills that you get and what you become of a person when you pass out of the B school probably shapes your character. So I think that goes much beyond the first placement or the campus job. So I think, yeah, if you think you're ready to actually go and absorb and be open to shape yourself in the B school, any time is a perfect time according to me.
Right.
Great. So I think because we are running short of time, we could take only these many questions. If I can have like a final summing up word from Sirisha ma'am and then Vivek sir.
Yeah, so I think it was fun talking today. Like for me, it was more like a recap of what I've done. So it makes me feel good. So thanks for making my Sunday. And so make sure you're learning all the time, and your life is what you make out of it. Don't ever try blaming it on somebody else. Take ownership of, at the same time, take ownership of your life, make your decisions, see what you want to do, and dream really big, because that's what takes you forward. Even if you're getting to 50-60% of where you want to get, right? It's what keeps your motivation high, what gets your energy levels high, what makes you fall down every time you get up. It's just your dreams of what you want to be. And yeah, all the best to everyone there.
Thanks, Sirisha. I think 1 hour was too short a time for us, because I think there are a lot of great insights which you can go deep, but a lot of valuable insights, and it's I think a pleasure to have you here, and help these students. And you're leaving you ending it at something which is our core principle, which is dream, endeavor, achieve. Okay. Yeah, so pretty much that's again pretty inspiring, and I think it should be very inspiring for our students. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for calling me over. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
everybody
so much. Thank
Good luck
you so
to
much.
all the students there.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Aditi.